Hey everyone, what's up? You know, about a couple months ago or so, I did a video where I talked about the differences of Japan animation and American animation. I talked recently about it as well. But the one difference I talked about with Japan and American animations, probably others as well, is the transformations that characters undergo, the mind controls that characters go. You know, I said that the difference between America, the US, and Japan and other countries like Japan, maybe not, is that, especially when it comes to an animated show, right? When it comes to an animated show, here in the US, we keep what is known as the transformation of, let's say, a good guy or a good girl, one of the heroes or heroines. We always keep the transformation into maybe a mindless zombie or a crystal or into a like crystal fragment or something like that. We always keep that transformation for one episode. Very rarely would we keep it longer than that, maybe an episode and a half. But you see, the difference with Japan's animation, which they call anime, is if that happens, sometimes they do the same thing. They go the same route. They'll keep it for an episode or so. But sometimes they'll keep it a lot longer. They always like to extend it because to them, their animes are like feature-length films, like mini-movies. So to them, in other countries that like them, they like to kind of keep it going for a while. True. Like I said, a majority of them, even Japan, like America, does it for one episode, but Japan does it for a lot longer. We have seen that. We have seen certain animes where that has occurred. I can't think of any right now, but I do know that there are some out there. I've seen them in the past. I've watched them. I know they're there. And it's even for live action as well. Here in the US, if you have a hour-long sci-fi show or something like that, the guy or the girl that gets transformed into whatever or has the mind control or whatever is only for one episode, maybe two, or at least an episode and a half, or half an episode, whatever you want to call it. In Japan, it's for a lot longer. It's like for a whole season. And again, that also goes with that animation. Now here in the US, our animation is the same way. Well, not the same way, but very rarely is the same way. I'll give you an example. Street Fighter. When the USA Network had Street Fighter, they used Street Fighter the first season, and they focused on Cammy being mind controlled by Bison, and it wasn't until the end of the season that she was able to regain control of her own mind. She was able to go back to the right side. Now, that's a rarity. And again, here in the US, it's very rare that happens. But there are certain examples that shows you that Japan and other countries, if they had had that opportunity, would have probably extended it for maybe a couple of episodes, a season, maybe a whole arc. We don't know. I'll give you an example. I recently was watching Cinemassacre.com, and I was watching James Wolfe, the AVGN, Angry Video Game Nerd, do a report, a video for SpikeTV.com, basically with Spike.com and Cinemassacre.com, where he looked back on Inhumanoids. Now, Inhumanoids was a little bit more of a, it was basically released around the time of Transformers and G.I. Joe, and even Jem, but it was more graphic and more darker than those shows could ever be. Not saying that Transformers wasn't that dark or graphic, because it was at times, especially with the movie. But Inhumanoids was way more than what people expected. Was way, really crossing the lines at times. And when he was talking about the show, talking about who the characters were and the villains were, one of the villains that he talked about was called Decompose. Now apparently Decompose is a kind of dinosaur-like inhumanoid villain who has a rib cage exposed, where if he opens it up he can put people inside and trap them in there and then take them out, I guess touch him and then say his name, and then what happens afterwards, after he takes him out of his rib cage, or at least keeps him in there for a while as a prisoner. I don't know, maybe, I don't know, I read somebody said on DeviantArt about it. But anyway, basically what this Decompose villain's power was is that anytime he put you in his rib cage, or anytime he touched you with his some kind of gas would emanate from his finger onto you, and he would drop you down, and he would say his name 3 times. He would say his name, Decompose, Decompose, Decompose. And basically by saying that, kind of like saying Beetlejuice, 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 right? You know, in the movie and later in the cartoon series, anytime Lydia said Beetlejuice, 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 he would come out of the board game, or she'd get transported into the world, or into his world. Well, not board game, but he would be transported out of that model of the city, or of the valley that they lived in, and or in the cartoon series she would transport to his world. So anyway, that's sort of like what Decompose was. But instead, what would happen is anytime he would touch somebody and he would say his name 3 times, and that gas would emanate for them, or that smoke would emanate for them, they would turn into an undead zombie. And sometimes it was just for 1 episode, sometimes it was 1 episode and a half. In fact, one of the heroes out of the series called, one of the main hero groups is called, well, the main hero group is known as the Earth Corps. And one of the main heroes was Sandra Shore. And apparently, according to what I read online, Decompose had an infatuation with her. So apparently, I don't know if it was towards the end of part 3, because she got reverted back in the middle of part 4, basically 13 minutes into part 4 she got reverted back. About 14 minutes actually into part 4 she was reverted back. But I don't know if it's in the middle or at the end of part 3. He touches her. I don't know if he put her in his rib cage and then took her out and then touched her. But what he did by touching her is she turned into a undead zombie, giant size. So apparently he has the power to not just turn them into undead zombies, but turn them into giant size if he feels like it. And the thing is about these, and again this goes back to the fact that this is a rarity at times. Well, not a rarity if it's like for an episode and a half here in the US, but you know, you compare it to Japan, and if Japan was writing this story, writing an adaptation for something like Inhumanoids, they would take Sandra's transformation and they would keep it going, not just for an episode and a half, not just for like maybe the middle to the end of part 3 and into just the first 13 minutes of part 4. What they would do, knowing how Japan is, and some other countries would do this as well, is they would keep it going for the rest of that pilot movie until at least to the very end. That's what they would do. And you know, and it's weird. And it's weird to know that that's the truth. I mean, I know you people watch this and you say, well, that can't be right, Brian. There's no way that's a difference, no way there's a huge difference between Japan and everything in America. You're right, it's not that big of a difference, but what I'm saying is the majority of the time, Japan and other countries like Germany, Europe, Australia, the United Kingdom, Russia, if they had China, you know, if they had the opportunity to do their own animated adaptations of things like Inhumanoids and Ninja Turtles and, you know, Sonic and well, of course Japan has done Sonic already, but you get the idea. Basically, if they had the chance to do adaptations of all versions of them, then a lot of the things that you saw, like the transformations, the mind controls, they would all be extended at least maybe over a few episodes. But like I said, you know, Sandra has only lasted, I think, from middle to the end of part 3 to at least 13 minutes into, or 14 minutes into part 4, and that was it. And what was unique about her transformation is that, just like Decompose, she had a, this is what really disturbed people, and I think this is why Inhumanoids didn't last too long, is that as an undead zombie giant, okay, anytime, alright, here's the thing. In animated cartoons, anytime someone's undead or something like that, yeah, they have abilities. Sometimes, depending on who's writing the show or writing the book, comic, or whatever, they have abilities that are unnatural. You know, and the same could be said for Sandra, because about a minute and a half before she was reverted back, she takes, I think, the leader of the Earth's core, the leader of the Earth core, the heroes, takes him, opens up her ribcage just like Decompose does, and puts him in. And that basically disturbed a lot of people, because that basically meant she was dead, if you could see her ribcage. But again, what's unique about this is that the way she was reverted back was thanks to sunlight, which I guess is kind of a common goal, common enemy for someone like Decompose. Was a common counter to Decompose's power. But again, if Japan, Russia, Australia, Germany, United Kingdom, if they all had the opportunities to do their own adaptations of something like that, her transformation into a giant shrieking zombie, which can open up with her rib cage exposed, and she can open it up and put people in, that would have lasted to the end of the arc. And it could be said for the second time it happened in an episode called Primal Passion. I haven't watched the episode, but according to what I read, Decompose gets hit with a love potion, and his infatuation with Sandra increases to the point that he hunts her down, I think at a Halloween party, grabs her and does the same thing to her again, except this time when she changes, she has a different design. And what's unique about the transformations that he puts on her and anybody else he causes to decompose is that it twists their minds, it turns them into evil people. It makes them enjoy this new side of them, enjoy being dead, or being undead, if you will. So, but again, she's reverted back thanks to sunlight. But again, this is just again, what I'm saying is if Japan and other countries out there like Russia and Australia had the opportunity, they would extend it for maybe a few more episodes. I remember, you know, Ninja Turtles, for example, the originals back in the 80s. When April got turned into that cat creature, yeah, I would have freed her, but here's what I would have done. I would have done it from, not me, but, well, this is not what I would have done, but knowing how Japan and Australia are, and Australia and Russia and all those other countries I talked about are, they would have extended April's transformation into a cat. Yeah, freed her for maybe 2 episodes or something like that, perhaps maybe 3, but free her maybe at the end of part 1, and then just let her be a cat for maybe, if you're doing 3 parts, for part 2, and then at the end of part 3 have her revert back. Or if it's a 2-parter, free her in part 1 and then use part 2 to find a cure to get her back to normal. The same thing could be said when she was turned temporarily into a fish woman. You get what I'm saying? Knowing how Japan and Australia and all of them are, they would have extended that. And the same could be said for the more recent Back to the Sewers episode, where she was turned into what is known as Demon April, into that yin-yang creature. Knowing how Japan, knowing how animation studios are in Japan, they would have probably extended it to the point that she's like sitting on a throne in one episode and thinking, what part of the world should I devastate first? You know, not even thinking, not even thinking of who she was, and basically starting to forget who she was. You know what I'm saying? I would have extended that maybe for 1 or 2 episodes. And then again, other examples are out there. You know, Transformers G1, the original Transformers, when they did the Only Human episode in season 3, knowing how Japan is, knowing how Australia, Russia, all those other countries I mentioned are, they would have probably extended it for an episode, as a 2-part episode, maybe 3. Same could be said for G.I. Joe when that guy got turned into a whale, could have extended that for 2 episodes, at least. Knowing how Japan and all those countries and their animation studios are, if they had a chance to adapt all these episodes and franchises in their own way, they would have extended it. Heck, even the same could be said for Sonic the Hedgehog, SatAM, the original SatAM show. They had Supersonic, right? Which was the second, I think the second episode aired originally, was the first episode aired, but sort of like in the middle or something like that. And they had Robotnik use Lazar's crystal to mind control Sally and Bunny. Now, of course, and I've mentioned this many times before, I thought honestly Sally and Bunny were going to be stuck like that for the rest of the season. Fortunately, it was only for half of the episode, if not that. So what does that tell me? That tells me if an animation studio like in Japan, if an animation studio in Japan or in Russia or in the United Kingdom or Australia, if they had a chance to adapt SatAM into their own vision, in their own ways, they would have had the mind control on Sally and Bunny last for at least the whole season until Sonic found a way to get them back to normal. Well, maybe not whole season, but maybe middle part of the season, or at least for first few episodes. Knowing how their animation and their stories differ from what we have here in the U.S., I wouldn't be surprised by that. Because you got to look at what Japan and all these other countries like Germany and Australia and all of them get away with. They can get away with things we can't get away with here in the U.S. We used to back in the 80s and early to mid 90s, but we can't get away with anymore. And not unless you have them on prime time and say this is a prime time show and it's got a PG rating. Can't get away with it. You see, what I'm saying, folks, is you list everything that I've talked about. Maybe you can list a few more. But what I'm saying is that it's very rare here in the U.S. that we extend something. We use in animation that we have transformations and mind controls that last for at least 1 episode or something like that in an animated series. In a movie, they probably last for about 15-20 minutes in the movie. Revolutionary Girl Utena from Japan is a good example of that. But what I'm saying is that majority of the time in animated cartoons, whether they're prime time or daytime, Saturday morning, Sunday morning, doesn't matter. What I'm saying is if Japan and if animation studios sorry about that, somebody stopped in front of the house. I wanted to see who that was. But anyway, what I'm saying is, if animation studios in countries like Japan and Australia, Europe, United Kingdom, England, Ireland, wherever, Canada, if they had the opportunity to do their own adaptations of our shows, of the shows I've mentioned, then there's no doubt in my mind that they would have extended a lot of the things I talked about for at least a few episodes, or at least for the rest of certain arcs and seasons. Like I said, very rare here in the U.S. that happens. Street Fighter, when it aired on USA as an animated series, is a rare exception. And there are other rare exceptions. I can't think of them right now. But what I'm saying is those are rare exceptions. But if you gave shows like certain situations that I mentioned, from like Inhumanoids with Sandra, and what happened to the Autobots, and in Transformers and stuff like that, and G.I. Joe and Sonic SatAM, and even Rescue Rangers, they had the mind control and chocolate chips and all that, and Dale beside himself. If you would have all that done by Japan, if you would give that opportunity to places like Japan, animation studios in Japan, Australia, and all that, no doubt in my mind they would have extended it for at least maybe another few episodes. No doubt in my mind. So, but that's just my thoughts on it. You guys tell me what you guys think about it. Do you agree or not? And if you know of any other shows you think Japan and Australia and any other situations, transformations, mind controls that out of animated shows that you think, from here in the U.S., that you think countries like animation studios in Japan and other countries would take advantage of and extend for a while. Let me know down below, and I'll talk to you later.